Good hello. If you have fallen into watching this video, perhaps it chose you rather than you choosing it. You've fallen into the world of greater self-understanding. Palmistry. It's the one free tool that we have to self-awareness, greater self-understanding, self-development, and self-improvement. Thanks for watching. In this full palm reading for a female aged 38, I'm going to be looking at health, wealth, family, and career. Now, this palm is it's quite a difficult reading. I've taken some notes already, and you can see by the shape of the hands and fingers, this person is very dynamic, but there's also a lot of practicality about this person as well. The differences in the left and the right hand are quite extreme, but, first of all, just to really sort of clarify with finding a classification in terms of their personality template, they don't fit into any one of the personality templates out there. Not one. And I mean anyone out there. I've checked them all. So this is a composite hand, a mixed hand. And when this happens, you have to look to the other tools. You have to look at what stands out, take notes. You have to look at the particular strengths in the palm, and it really tests the skill of the palmist. And also, it's good to look at the numerology, the astrology as well. And I've combined a little bit of tarot in this as well. Now, this person's birthday, they are a Sagittarius, but only just. They're on the cusp. So they are on the cusp of being Capricorn as well. So their numbers in terms of their birthday, the numbers 3 and 6 are massively significant. Harrow works off the basis of the knowledge of numerology, the Chaldean numerology. In a sense, tarot was devised as a sort of visual, a way of understanding numerology visually. And for this person, the numbers 3 and 6 are prevalent, and they are two themes that they will revisit cyclically in their lifetime. And that is the Empress and the Lovers. And already you can kind of draw a connection between these two. The obvious is femininity. The Empress, when you look at this card, what you see is a very powerful, dominant force of nature, of um, abundant growth, of control. This is someone who is very self-assured, very self-aware, and there's a great sense of abundance about this, provided this person is in control. There's a raw um, power of innocence and femininity and control. And I think so long as this person has a good amount of self-understanding, they will have in abundance control. They'll have their dominant behavior will be um, prosperous and useful and helpful and productive. And I think that's partly uh, one of the lessons here, one of the key themes here. You cannot tame nature. Loving the self is part of this bigger picture here, part of the bigger lesson at heart. It's important not only to love all the beauty around you and to harness those Apollonian qualities about you, all things Apollonian, but also to love the self, to make time for the self, literally in a natural environment. Now, the Lovers card, the number 6 pops up quite a lot for this person as well. It's another prevalent theme. These are the two most prevalent themes. This card represents balance. It's all about decision making within polar opposites, within night and day, yin and yang, masculine and feminine. And both of these traits are quite strong within this person. And I say that because there are massive differences between the left and the right hand, because they are a composite hand. So already we have inherited traits from the mother and father. It's likely that their mother and father had completely opposing characteristics. And, you can see that Jupiter the amount of Jupiter, the Jupiter finger is so much higher on the right hand. There's a simian line on the right hand, whereas we don't have that on the left. There's just loads of differences, but then like big differences. Apollo is shorter on the right hand, whereas Jupiter is much stronger. So the masculine is stronger, and the feminine is weaker. Is There's a developed change here within. So it provides us with an answer of one of two things. As I say, completely polar opposite personalities within their parents. Their mum and their dad were just complete polar opposites. Or we have here a complete change in personality, in the physicality, in the way they carry themselves and present themselves socially in their career. And and I think that's probably more likely. They've developed their masculinity in order as a self-preservation. And that's already telling. That's already giving us a clue as to what's happened in the past. And we'll see that in the left hand. The left hand shows us what's internal. So before I get into that, because I have a habit of jumping the gun, I'm going to explain a little bit more about the Lover's card. This theme that they need to, there's a lesson here that they need to understand balance, choice when it comes to relationships, decisions when it comes to relationships, not just with friendships and romantic relationships, but with the self as well, because this represents both the masculine and feminine within. There appears to be a God hanging above Adam and Eve, kind of ready to make a decision. Their fate hangs within the balance of the god Raphael. And really, it's all about harmony and communication, decision making. In order to love another and ourselves, communication and perspective are key traits that we need to develop, that we need to concentrate on. So when we're having an argument, it's important to take a step back, take a breather, think about our feelings and why we feel that way before communicating. Really slow down that. Don't jump into a reactionary state of mind. Slow it down. Take a step back. Think about it from their perspective. Sometimes stepping away from the situation because you're too close to it. And the same for understanding the relationship between you and yourself. If you're beating yourself up, oh, I'm fat, I'm stupid. Would you say that to a best friend? No. Imagine yourself in another's perspective, talking to yourself like that. And so the Lover's card is really about perspective, communication, and understanding. Communication and understanding when it comes to decision making in relationships, both with others and the self. So there we go. These two themes are lessons in this person's life that they need to understand, that they need to really listen to before, whenever it comes to great challenges and obstacles, um, circumstances in their life. So before I get into the more complex information in the palms themselves, the lines in the palms, I'm going to look at the chirognomy first. We have to identify before we can analyze, before we can conclude. And this kind of three-stage formula is something that my mentor taught me. You look at the hand template, get this right. Arguably, it's the most important process of palmistry, of identifying the personality template. We have here a composite, and then we start looking at the more complex information and filtering it through that. So what we have here is someone who has a great sense of creative energy, or should I say, energetic creativity. And that's seen by the very well developed lunar mount here. The hand in itself presents as dynamic, but also practical, kind of a mix between a dynamic hand and a practical hand. Now, dynamic hands classically have struggles in relationships, both with themselves and others. So already what I've said about in their numerology, that already represents. And Capricorn, Sagittarius and Capricorn are ruled by Jupiter and Saturn. In that order, this person is ruled by Jupiter and Saturn. And we see already an elevated Jupiter mount. So you can see here how the palmist, when we need to rely on more than just what the palm is telling us, we have those tools at our disposal. And this is where, it really comes down to the skill of the palmist with those tools. So Jupiter and Saturn sit highest on this person's palm. It's no surprise, being a Sagittarius and Capricorn second. As I say, they sit just on the cusp there. There is an element about this hand that it appears to have strong Neanderthal DNA. They wanted to know about their health, so I'm going to touch on that and why that's relevant a little bit later on in terms of diet and potential predispositions to health issues. The other thing that is significant is the thumb and the forefinger. Look at the way it's kind of ready to grasp the world. It's ready to manipulate, literally sort of almost kind of pick up a piece of environment and put it somewhere else and maneuver and manipulate and manage and control and dominate. There's a great sense of power about this person. And as I mentioned, the Empress shows us that the abundance of tremendous um, nurturing abundance, that giving quality. All things Apollonian about this person inherently are incredibly strong, and that's how it relates to the Empress card, because Apollo is all about creativity, art, natural beauty. These are all relevant to the Empress. All the fingers lean towards Apollo on both hands, and this signifier is really one of the only common denominators between both hands. So what we have here already is someone I can see who would benefit from developing and understanding their femininity more, their Apollonian, inherent Apollonian abilities, creativity, artistic nature. And I think they are already an artist, a highly artistic person anyway. Now, as I say, this is a dynamic person with a sense of practicality. And when we look at the fingernails, this and the thumbs as well, we can really see there's a lot of squareness here. Now, yes, they are rectangular, but there's a great deal of squareness, especially when it comes to Mercury and Jupiter. So there's a real sort of conformity or sense of order and security, materialism, practicality, just very grounded and down to earth approach in terms of how they receive and pick up on information, how they sense the world around them. So within, there's a very dynamic way about them, but the way they approach things is very practical. The hand itself, the hand shape, the palm shape, sorry, itself is very square. And that, in conjunction with a squared off Mercury finger, although it doesn't kind of look it here, and Jupiter's certainly square. The thumb is square as well. We definitely have a square hand, um, only just, so definitely only just. But there's also a very dynamic nature. Now, dynamic hands are typically they overwork themselves. They are just in constant work mode. They are at risk of adrenal burnout and they struggle in relationships. And this is partly because they're just so dominating. It's almost as though when they find a suitable mate, if they find that they are not dominant enough in themselves and self-assured enough in themselves and confident, then there's the dynamic hand kind of looks down on them and gets a bit annoyed with them and sort of thinks, well, you're a bit pathetic. What? You don't match me. But if someone does match them, then they find they are at odds with them. They find the conflict there. So there's a real struggle to find that coherence in terms of relationships. And actually, where I think this person will struggle most in relationships is the relationship they have with themselves. And that's partly because the hands are just so very different from left to right. As I say, this person is dominated by Jupiter, then Saturn. And we see that literally by the mounts themselves, Jupiter, Saturn. What we need is more encouragement from our Apollonian and our Mercurian abilities within this person. That's what this person needs to develop more, their communication and expressive abilities as well as their artistic and creative. The left hand Mercury finger is longer than on the right, although certainly development of persuasion seen here, but there's a sense of they have developed a sense of greater self-understanding, which is perfect. However, their relationship with themselves needs improvement, and they've developed confidence as well. So that's magnificent. I'm really pleased about that. The need to be in charge and control situations is a key trait of the dynamic hand. Anyway, this is where they excel. Actually, is leadership roles. Um, they 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 are very good delegators. They seem to have people sort of um, come to them with their problems, and dynamic hands are so hard working, and they're constantly in a state of mind of needing to kind of fix things, that it just sort of falls that way. But the needs to control and dominate here have been exacerbated, have been enhanced because of previous life experiences, and this has been sort of developed as a coping mechanism for previous traumas. And this can be seen in the left hand, particularly at the age of around about 12. I would say the heart line, there's a line here, branches down and hits the lifeline at this time, showing us this trauma. And this is, why the right hand is developed in the way it has. It's showing us this, I'm going to take control of this. I'm not going to let this happen to me again. That kind of nature, that kind of thing has happened here. And on the right hand, what we see actually is a slightly different picture. We see a simian line here, or at least that's what I believe I'm seeing. And that's because we see the heart line here rising upwards. We see the headline kind of join into it, but it also breaks away and rolls down the hand here. We see a slightly different picture of events just here, but I believe that's what's occurring here. It's a very complicated emotional and psychological makeup that has developed here, and there's a doubling headline here. The headline overlaps and doubles for a period of time, which shows um, drastic perspective change. It shows how a person thinks um, very differently in two different environments. There's a need for that. This is very internal. When I was first looking at this image, I was looking at this one in particular, and it's quite dark, so the lines will be a bit more kind of pronounced here. This is the best one to look at, and you can see the straight line all the way across the hand. I thought Suwon crease, coined by the Korean hand analyst um, who discovered it. And then I looked at this picture, and now I'm sort of thinking, well, that's not a Suwon crease at all. It's a simian line. And now I'm changing my mind again and saying, well, this is actually a heart line, this is a headline, and then there is this branch coming down from the heart line and making its way into to hit the lifeline. So in fact, I'm going back on everything now, and I don't think this is a simian line. However, it certainly relates to the overlap and the doubling in the headline seen on the left hand. So what we have here, the right hand shows us the physical. This is a physical trauma, and this has affected this. This is how this has affected this person internally. The need to shift perspectives. It could be even a potential a breakdown, possibly. I find it interesting. I sort of stumble there because I'm thinking the headline here, notice how it's risen higher, and it shows us that the gap in between the head and heart line has drastically changed. It's shifted. It shows um, a lack of warmth, a lack of generosity and openness. And that means that the person's retracting. They're having to because they're going into defense mode. That means they've been attacked. That means they're hurt. And we certainly see that by the way this heart line is tracked right down onto the lifeline. Now, I have struggled with this, as you can see so far, and that's because this person is a composite hand. There's just so much about this hand. It's so very complicated. On the left hand, I don't see this kind of Neanderthal genetics so much as I do on the right. On the right, we see this little finger here is beginning to curl, and as is Apollo. Neanderthal DNA is seen much more in dynamic hands. The sort of triangular given shape here we see of the palm. And what I think we see here is this Dupuytren's contractor, which you only see in people who have Neanderthal DNA. That's as in high amounts, everyone has it, but high amounts as in 3% or more. And because of this, a person is likely to suffer with um, specific kind of digestive issues and would benefit from specific diets, particularly a Mediterranean diet. But I'll go into that in a bit more detail soon. The ideas of this person appear to be just so very vast. And I think what matters to this person is I think that the ideas of this person overall, a strong look at Luna, it's just so well developed, as is obviously the ideas of this person. I think that they are constantly in their own minds and hearts. That the upper portion of the palm is well developed in itself, it's slightly wider, giving it this triangular appearance, even though Luna is so well developed. It's just, see what I mean? It's just so much going on. It's so hard to sort of throw into one category and take that shortcut. We just can't do that here. So this person is highly mentally active, highly emotionally active, likely a little bit psychic because so many people with high amounts of Neanderthal genetics are. But there's a great deal of stress within this person. They're so thinking so much they can't switch off. They are in overdrive. There we go. That's the word, overdrive. And I can see that physically, how it's affecting them physically by their fingers. If we look up here, we've got lots of little upwards strokes here and here and here. We don't see it as much on the right hand, thankfully. We see it on all the fingers on the left hand. We don't see it, we see it on all the fingers on the right hand, but not on the tips. Now, not quite anyway, all of them. And this is a natural development of adrenal burnout. We see it rising up on all the fingers first on the left hand, and then when it fully rises up onto the tips of the right hand, that's when we're in full irreversible endocrine system breakdown. So what's happening here is this person is overworking themselves. Again, a classic dynamic hand trait. This person needs to, again, relationship with the self, needs to take a step back, sit in nature, and admire what they've done. Respect what they've been through and how it's affected them. Respect me time. That's what they need. They need to actually take a step back and really bathe, bask in the fruits of their own labor because they are extremely hardworking. And I have no doubt that they have strong commitments at home. And I say that partly because of the frustration seen here, but this pent up ideas, the thoughts, just literally just that so many thoughts. This person, it's going to manifest physically if this person's not careful, and it already is happening. Low stress. I mean, you could provide that advice to anyone, couldn't you? But it's extremely important this person steps away from stressful environments right now. Sleep is extremely important. Low sugar, getting the right kinds of fats, not cutting out fat altogether, just the healthier fats. So this is why I mentioned the Mediterranean diet. Fish, for example, nuts and olives, fine. Those are good fats. Avocados, good fats. But the other fats, not so good. They will create sleep issues, digestive issues, and it'll all have these awful knock-on effects. And it's probably been happening for a while. So I'm going to actually provide a bit more structure now, and I'm going to work through their questions. Now, they asked me, again, I'll just reiterate, health, wealth, family, and career. So let's just go through all those first things now. First of all, health, I've already touched on it a little bit. So as I have already mentioned, endocrine system support is required, and we do that just very holistically by doing lots of different little things often. So as I mentioned, stress, meditation, the right diet, sleep is a really important one. And the thyroid gland is part of the endocrine system. And if this person doesn't start to look after their bodies and balance, again, we're coming back to the lover's card now, balance is needed, harmony in terms of yin and yang, day and night, work and rest. This person needs more of rest, and they need to learn how to give that to themselves, love themselves in that respect. That's what this is about. So this person requires or will require support with their thyroid gland if they're not careful. They are starting to step into that territory at the moment because I can see it develop on the little finger here, as in 3 or more lines, upward lines on the tip of Mercury shows that. Thankfully, we don't quite see it here yet. So we're not in the danger zone thyroid area yet, although we're not far from it. Meditation, I think, is a big one. That would really help. Diet, as I say, nuts, meat, seafood, anything from the sea, great, because this is all Neanderthal diet I'm talking about now. Green leafy vegetables and mushrooms. Everyone talks about getting your 5 a day, but no one talks about mushrooms, and they have massive B vitamin benefits. Amino acids you need in higher protein foods, higher fiber foods as well, and you'll get that from meat as well as the healthier fats. A lot of people are very anti-fat. There's nothing wrong with fat as long as it's good fat and in moderation, along with everything else. You can overdose on strawberries if you like, vitamin A, everything in moderation. And that's what this is about. As I've said, balance. This person needs to balance and they need more of loving the self. They are incredibly good at throwing themselves into work as a coping mechanism, as a way of, I mean, maybe not necessarily a coping mechanism, but it's their go-to. It makes them feel good, but they need to listen more to their body. So the other thing I've noticed health-wise is obviously I've mentioned the digestive issues, and you can see that more so on the left hand. See this here, these little lines running parallel with each other. It creates resistance in the gut area. Also, I've noticed this here, and I'm wondering again if this is endocrine related. I'm wondering if there's potential predisposition towards eczema, psoriasis, and it might be this person is having some sort of adverse effects to pharmaceutical medication. I don't know. These are known as allergy lines or toxicity lines, and I think that's what we're seeing here is a little bit of body's dislike to um, something that they're in contact with. Sometimes it's metal, sometimes it's fillings, or wearing of rings, or you know, sometimes it's poor drinking water. But I don't think that's the case here. If it were, we'd see a widening of the heart line, large looping islands, creating, forming the heart line. Forgive me, I think I said lifeline before. And that's what we would expect to see when we see metals in the blood, toxicities in the blood. We don't see that here. This isn't what's causing the potential for thyroid issue. It's adrenal burnout, overwork, and probably poor quality sleep as well is not helping. How am I doing so far? Perhaps you're confused. Perhaps you're thinking, my word, there's no structure to this reading whatsoever. That's just how it is sometimes. The information just flies at you and you've got to fire it back out as you see it. Well, I am sorry about that, but I hope you're enjoying it. I hope you're learning. If you are, please feel free to give me a like and a subscribe. And also, if you'd like to learn with me on a fortnightly basis, sign up for my level 2 membership. So I'm going to move on to family. And with this person, they've asked me about their family. It's very difficult in the palms to consider someone's family. You can see how their family affects them. We're looking at one person here, but I can't talk about their children specifically and what's going on in their lives, or even their partner or mum or dad, because I'm not looking at their hands. But what I can see is how this person is influenced and affected by their family, to some degree at least. Now, these lines here, sometimes referred to as worry lines or stress lines, they are, in my book, influence lines. Literally, my book, I'm writing one. And they are influences close to home from the domestic sphere, where family is concerned. They are influences from close to home, family, friends, and our loving relationships, and how these affect us on the right hand, practically, externally. And what we can see here is what looks to be a very stressful occurrence here. Now, this one comes from the heartline. This is different. This is disappointment and hurts and trauma. And this is at the age of about 24, something like that. Um, and it's a very different sign altogether. And we see ambition rising from this time. This person went through a very traumatic period, and this is likely directly connected with the break in the headline and what caused the shift in perspective and retracting into the self a bit more, and um, a lack of ability to articulate emotionally in social settings, public settings, career, really sort of speak up for themselves. In relationships, they are behind closed doors, they're a very different person. And that's what the doubling of the line shows. And that's what also the length of the little finger on the left hand shows as well. Let's say, again, this is a very complicated person who's been through very complicated things. But I digress. So, this event here, firstly, there's two events really. There's this one event here, which as I mentioned, is about the age of 24, and it does appear to be related to family in some way. Perhaps there was support at this time. So I find it interesting because this deep hurt, trauma, disappointment chain crashes through the lifeline and right into the domestic sphere. There's just so much here, and it does seem to be connected somehow to family. It goes right into inner Mars here. This person's angry about this, um, but also it could be the loss of someone. So I've just been quickly checking the fate line for any kind of interferences, crosses, or something that might imply the potential for loss of a parent. I don't see that. So this is something else. Anyway, it certainly affected this person's drive, determination, motivation. And this is partly why this incident right here directly affected the Saturn and Jupiterian qualities in them, and it's enhanced their already dynamic traits. What I find really fascinating here is that the lifeline at the age of roughly, I'm going to say about 35, because directly where this influence line crosses the lifeline and the both fate lines hits the headline at the age of 35. I find it fascinating because the lifeline actually disconnects at this time. So what this shows us is, I mean, first of all, before this time, a few years before this time, we see strong influences from family, and it's high up on Venus, basically inside inner Mars as well. And this is a place of fighting for family, so that's interesting in itself because it's both Mars and Venus. And when we kind of hit that threshold, it's about family, it's about fighting for those we love. So it's a combination of the two. I find just really interesting. And it hits the lifeline, it stops there. So we know that it affects this person positively. It's not creating a barrier, an obstacle. Whereas this one here it jars. It's almost like it's almost the other way around. It's almost the way you have a decision here which to affect the life, and this affects the family negatively. That's almost like the other way around. And maybe that's what we're seeing here. The life itself is jarred out of place and continues onwards. It's broken. So I'm wondering if, I mean, is it broken? It, it's hard to see, but I feel like it overlapped, but only just. So there's a potentially big decision here that could look to completely rock the boat, maybe went against the family's decisions. Partly why I'm saying that is because we have two fate lines. One of them runs from around Venus itself, which is very telling, and the other comes from Luna, and it's a much more Apollonian beginning. It's a much more, I want to work with an audience in front of me. I want to do something creative. I want to work in a creative industry. I've got a lot to give, and this is the Empress. So I find it fascinating because on the left hand as well um, we have a fate line here, which is actually part of the lifeline. And this does happen sometimes. Sometimes you have to read the lifeline as a fate line and the other way around. Sometimes this happens. Um, sometimes a lifeline will reach right down and then join into the fate line and continue and then come back out into Venus again. Sometimes that happens on my hand. And here what we have is it's a fascinating feature because we have here the fate line and it joins into the lifeline and tries to break away and rise up towards Saturn. And the other way of interpreting this, and I'm tempted to say this, is that the fate line actually comes from inside Venus itself, which is extremely rare. And where it tries to cross the lifeline is a tremendous island. And it is at the time that this person decided to make this great change to their own life and rocked the boat. And this we kind of know of now because we're seeing just how this person was affected internally by this decision. They had to make this decision to take control of their life, to do what it is they wanted to do. I find that really interesting. Only a few years ago, 3 years ago, in fact, this person made a big decision to step away from what it was that the family wanted, I think. And that is because, when you see a fate line, coming around from around Venus like this and rising upwards, it shows the family has been involved in a person's destiny. Um, they've decided for a person what it is they're going to do, and it's often you see it in the hands of people who have they work in the family business and they've had no choice about it. From young, they kind of just grow up and oh, I'm working on a farm, am I? That's how it's going to be then. Okay, this is my life. Or any number of family businesses. Sometimes wealthy parents decide their child is going to be um, a star, and they put them on stage, and and you'll see a fake line like that in their hands as well. But what I also see on the right hand here, and the right hand is what's external, it's what's been developed, is this fate line that rises from Luna, and it's quite strong. There's a lot of ideas, a lot of pressure here, it's a burning ambition, in fact, to see it into the palm, and it rises up to the headline, and where it does, it stops, and there's this decision. So I'm kind of getting this idea, this impression, this person, it's a really confusing one. It's almost as though they were following their dream and they stopped. Perhaps they stopped because they had familial needs. I mean, perhaps they're supporting their family at 35. Tremendously confusing. What I think we see here is this is the lifeline, and where this island develops, it kind of breaks the lifeline, and we see the lifeline, you know, traveling inwards, creating a much small amount of Venus, creating a person who has retracted, as I mentioned before. They've closed off their social um, network, they've isolated themselves somewhat, and their fate line is sort of joined on to their lifeline, and it's trying to sort of break away and break upwards. And it's the combination of all of this has created um, a very stressful um, conflict. Now, the right hand being the external, just because we don't see a fate line after this time rising upwards from the headline, it's not to say that there is no destiny or that there is no money. It means that a person's destiny from this age onwards is not as clear. We have an idea as to what this person thinks and feels and desires. We see that by this line right here. So now I'm getting the impression this person is overworked because of family. This is this might be my most difficult palm reading yet. And I can see why this person has asked for a palm reading. Things look completely uncertain. But what I will say is that, and I think they already have this idea anyway. The fate line, you can see it rising from the headline, and it comes from a direction that is, it looks to be lunar based, and lunar, look how red it is. It's just brimming with imagination. So the sun line as well on the left hand looks to be branching down and trying to form these connections here and make a create a bridge over this how the person feels. There is almost this the obstacle here is very internal because this person is at odds with what they feel is right and what it is that they want. And that's really interesting because they are on the cusp of they are Sagittarius, but they're on the cusp of being a Capricorn. Jupiter and Saturn, what they want and others. That's fascinating. Jupiter is all about ambition and ego and control and power and dominance, authority, judgment. Saturn is all about our societal contribution, traditional values, time, planning, being doing the right thing. And I feel this is a key theme that I'm seeing in on all aspects here. It's important, obviously, to do right by family, but we need to do right by ourselves as well. And everything that I've seen in this person's hand shows me that they are not looking out for number one. And that's a trick you can only keep up for so long. It's like spinning a plate because at some point you'll burn out. There will be health issues and you won't be able to support your family. You need to look after yourself. But you also need to look out for your own desires, not just your own needs. I'm not talking about just basics. I think this person has likely 3 children. We can see 3 upward strokes just up here. I believe I see a relationship line there. I think maybe here. It's really hard to see. So I think there's three, at least, I think there's 3 children here. Might be another from another partnership. I think there's a lot of commitment at home. After this age of 35, it's very stressful time. There's a lot of needs coming from the domestic sphere that interfere with this person's, you know, need to move on in life, to to live their life. And that's what the lifeline is showing here. It's not until the age of about 42 this person really gains some semblance of balance, it seems, at the rate they're going. Lines can and do change. And I see there's, quite narrow between the head and the heart line here. And I feel that that's partly because of what they've been through, emotionally speaking. It's rocked their framework. But I also think it's a necessity. They don't have anything left to give. And it's not to say that I don't care, because I can clearly see a very it's low lying heart line and it's set to rise. And the heart line, although very straight on the left hand, it does reach right into Jupiter. So they are highly idealistic. And I think this is partly why this person probably has struggled in the past in relationships as well, because they demand so much from themselves and they demand exactly the same amount from someone else. I mean, why wouldn't you? It's important to um, tone this demand in yourself down, to expect less from yourself, because actually you're giving too much of yourself anyway. So expect less from yourself and others, less disappointment that way. I find it interesting that Mars, all the while that you have this tremendously difficult time, you've got this assistance, you've got your backup reserve, your central heating is just being fueled. You're running on empty though, and that's what I'm seeing here. You've got what it takes to get through this. There's no doubt about it. It's just I don't want you coming out the other side of it a complete wreck. Your success line on your left hand shows um, that it's swinging right out over onto Mercury. And as I mentioned earlier on, it's important to focus on all things Apollonian and Mercurial. And this is really showing a career in something artistic, success and happiness comes from pursuing creativity and something artistic, creative industries, um, and that way of expression is helpful, beneficial. It's going to provide you with a great deal of happiness in later life. And when I say later life, I mean actually I would say from about 53 and onwards, it seems this is when we really start to see this. And you will get there, and you'll get there through a tremendous drive and determination, which is a testament to yourself, really, because it's very rare that you see a kind of success line come from this area of outer Mars. There's such a resilience about you, a resistance about you that is commendable. The other way of interpreting these two lines here is a doubling of a life, of course. That would be the most obvious interpretation, and perhaps that is true. If that is the case, you're leading a double life, and that would explain the adrenal burnout. That would explain this family, work, two very different environments that you have to um, mentally work very differently, and that might be why we have this overlap here. I think you're doing the job of two different people, and I think it's killing you. And I think at 55, there will be a tremendous change in your life as to how this all works. One way or another, something's got to give, right? And I don't mean a change for the worse, but at around about the age of 42, that's where things really start to improve for you. Maybe even 40, I would say. So in a couple of years. So this person asked me, am I doing what's meant for me and will I be successful? It's a difficult question to ask. Most of us have the fate of our hands, our own fate lies in our hands, I should say. And we have at our disposal the ability to carve our own destiny, most of us. And for this person, that's true. Am I doing what I should be doing? Yes and no. Yes, as I say, you're doing right by your family, but you're not doing enough right by yourself. This business venture or whatever it is that you decided to start doing recently, as seen by this, you know, what looks like actually a business line, I think it's the right thing to do. I think it's going to work. I don't think there's going to be a tremendous amount of money that comes from it. Success, what is it? For you, money is not nearly as important as it is to a lot of other people. Being a dynamic can being, but being practical, there is some actually, it's a bloody useful tool, isn't it? So I think it's extremely important as a tool for the future, but it's not the be all and end all. It's not the goal. It's not the aim. Success for you is more about happiness, prosperity, security, but also seeing something grow, seeing your efforts really understood and rising to a position that you deserve. I think your sun line or sun lines are relatively new, and I do think that they are going to strengthen. I think they're going to continue to grow. We see here the makings of a fate line. It's really doing its best to grow up here as well. So, because I don't see much of one here, it's not to say you don't have one. This fate line here has been faint from the get-go anyway, and this was what was kind of decided for you, and you've taken control of your own destiny more than once. So what you're doing right now, I believe, is a good idea. No, you're not making a great deal of money right now. But in future you'll make a decent amount. It won't be a tremendous amount. It's not going to be you're not going to be, a billionaire or anything. But I do think that it's going to provide you with a great sense of fulfillment. I think it's going to be a role that you're really happy in. And that is our fundamental of success, isn't it? If we're doing what we're good at, we're doing what we enjoy and we're making money from it. Well, those are the three signs of success. If you've got all three, well, that's success. And I think that is where you're headed. I think it's going to be highly emotionally beneficial for you. And I think it's going to help you communicate more and develop those Apollonian, those creative and artistic abilities, which are all things which will help um, align within, because Jupiter and Saturn are so strong within you, and what you actually need is more creativity, more expression. If your career is aimed in this way, is requires strengthening, requires those skill sets, then absolutely, absolutely continue doing what you're doing. Wow. So it's been a bumpy ride, and I'm sorry about the crazy complicated nature of my back and forth and going back over my word and everything. But that's just how it is sometimes. And I'm glad that you were here with me. As I say, maybe you found this video, maybe it found you. I hope you learned something, and I hope it's provided context within what you knew or know about palmistry. Perhaps you watch this video now, you've got more questions than answers. If that's the case, please feel free to email me. And thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe.